Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we explore convenient yet effective shortcuts that will help you get ahead and move forward faster by becoming a better leader. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rembach.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because I have somebody on the show today who I think is going to help us with a very critical element to our overall well-being. Samuel Knickerbocker was born in Utah and raised in Parma, Idaho, a small town on the Idaho-Oregon border. He is the son of 2 happily married parents and the 7th of their 11 kids. There was never a dull moment in his house. You always had at least one friend and one enemy. Growing up, Samuel was homeschooled, which provided a lot more contact and conversation with the family financial situation. They received and made financial decisions as a family, working as a team to accomplish financial goals. It was here that Samuel learned much of his leadership and management skills. Samuel got his first full-time job at the age of 11 in a honey extracting plant, and from there worked in the food, construction, sales, and service industry while never really losing sight of his passion. Samuel loves leading others to gain greater self-confidence and build stronger relationships. The legacy that he's excited to leave behind is one of action and love. When his generations are talking about him, he wants them to be saying that he was committed to lifting others around him and always looking for ways to pour belief into others about their infinite potential. He now works as a wealth transformation coach, walking people through the habits, mindsets, and behaviors required to build a financial foundation that can support a long-lasting legacy. Samuel currently lives in Pleasant Grove, Utah, and has the most incredible angelic wife named Charlie, and they have been blessed with 2 boys, Declan and Quincy. Samuel Knickerbocker, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
Oh, absolutely, man. I'm pumped.
I'm glad you're here. Now, I've given my Legion a little bit about you, but can you share what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, one of my biggest passions and my biggest dreams, if I was just could make it happen today, which I'm working on, would be to speak in the Georgia Dome in front of 100,000 people about love, forgiveness, gratitude, and self-confidence, self-belief in themselves. And that is like my ultimate passion. I have been chasing that from a lot of different angles. And when I actually studied neuropsychology in college, so got into the research and was almost going to be a neuroscientist. But then I decided, look, there's so much going on, and most of the social problems that we experience, depression, anxiety, divorce, domestic violence, and the list goes on and on. Most of these problems are in the socioeconomic status of the lower income. And so I saw that and I was like, man, there's no reason for me to go to years of schooling to try and fix something that should never have been broken. Shifted my whole focus in life to finance, to ultimately have the same objective, help people gain that confidence, the love, the self-respect, those things, but do it from a financial foundation perspective, helping people gain that confidence in their life and in their ability to provide for their loved ones, their family. And as they do that, then everything else is actually able to be built on top of that. But it starts with, can you eat? Can you shelter yourself? Can you have transportation? Just a basic needs. And once you satisfy those basic needs, then it's a lot easier to actually think about, oh, well, what do I want to be remembered for? And actually start thriving rather than just surviving.
You know, as you're talking, and you and I had the opportunity to chat a little bit before the interview, is I started thinking about, a lot of people who I have interactions with in the contact center world and customer experience world, and we're trying to improve and support and develop the performance of people who are on the front line interacting with customers. And, you talked about that lower end of the economic, status and economic, cycle and economic position. And a lot of those people are working in these contact centers, and they're working, many times multiple jobs. And so if I'm leading, those people, and I need to help them be more successful, I must have their financial well-being in mind, and this whole legacy and legacy creation for myself and them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say from a position that I work similar like that. I bring in business partners and I train them how to do what I do and how to become good financial advisors or good people who understand the financial world and go out and serve families. And sometimes they start in a very similar place, right? They're just walking into the job thinking, hey, can this be a career for me? Can this be a purpose? Can this be a life? And what I think is so crucial from a leadership perspective is really being able to understand what each person's individual gifts are. If you just blanket say, hey, I know you guys are all great at this or whatever, if you haven't really understood that individual's gifts and you start telling them that they're good at something that inside they don't believe themselves good at, then they're gonna not believe in themselves even more, and they're gonna kind of see you as somebody who's telling falsities or just trying to build them up from an ego perspective, rather than really identifying their gift and helping them know that you recognize what their main gift is. Maybe it's like every time a customer walks in, you smile. That gift right there, that's what makes you special. That's why I want you on my team. And you're always helping them really identify their identity. And ultimately, I would think in your position, the goal would not to always have them on the front line. The goal would be a leadership factory where you're bringing people in the front lines and you're spitting them out and they're being able to move on to bigger and better things. And you're impacting the world by having this leadership factory where people are coming in and they're spinning out with so much belief in themselves that they're going out and accomplishing just wonderful things.
That's a really interesting point that you bring up, because I was just having this discussion with a top level executive in a financial institution. It's one of those that, do you have these in your wallet type of companies. And he was talking about so many vacant positions that they had in a senior leader type of position, and even mid-level. They just have a lot of, jobs that are not going filled. And I said, while I may be able to assist and support you in finding, people to actually fill some of those roles, I said, reality is you have to groom them. You have to develop them. I mean, when you even start thinking about successful sport clubs, and sometimes I don't like to use that analogy, but I think it applies here. When you look at and I love baseball, and when you look at the most successful baseball programs, the ones that are the most successful and can sustain it is that they're developing their farm system. They're not doing it through going and trying to hire in the free agent markets, unless of course you're the Yankees and you got the money. But you've got to build it. You've got to groom them. You have to have that factory. And so for leaders, I think it's like you said, it's really important for me to have the mindset of I need to help people to surpass me. That could be one of my most powerful legacies.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an industrial psychologist who ended up being, I forget the college he was the dean of, but David Bednar is his name. And he's written lots of papers on this. But one of the things he said from a leadership perspective is if you're not actively trying to replace yourself, like that should be your focus, is like, how can I replace myself? How can I train my replacement? Then you're never going to get a promotion. If you yourself if there's nobody under you who can replace you, then why would we take you away? Why would we promote you if there's nobody to fill your spot? So like, it's super self-serving almost to make sure that you're training people. It's counterintuitive because you think, well, if I train them to do my job, then I'm going to get fired, right? No, if you're good enough to train somebody to replace you, then you're going to be better than the other 10 people on your same level, and you're going to get promoted out of that position. You're going to end up, even if it's just they create a position so you can go train all the other people how to train, it doesn't matter, but you've got to always be thinking from a love and abundance standpoint rather than a fear and scarcity. And anytime you step into, well, if I do that, then I might lose, then you're in fear and scarcity. You got to remove your mind from that. That's a habit and a mindset that you have to be able to change to really be successful as a leader, or to be successful as a follower. Even you have to be able to shift. What do I believe my potential is? What's my identity, and can I achieve that?
Well, and what you're saying too is that I think sometimes it could be misleading to say that, I'm going to do this to get promoted, because maybe it is that I just find my fulfillment and my legacy is in, that I was a leader who developed and created so many of all these other leaders. I didn't need to have that position of higher authority. Matter of fact, oftentimes when you get to positions of higher authority, you don't get as much opportunity to develop leaders because you're too busy doing some other things that may not be as fulfilling.
Yep. That's so true.
So you and I also had talked about a couple of tools that you created to me that seemed very fascinating and interesting to me, and I definitely would like to make your ebook available to all of our listeners. So tell us a little bit about what you've developed with that.
Yeah, for sure. So I have an ebook that I've written. It's the nine pillars to build a meaningful legacy is what its current title is. It's a working title. I may shift it because I want it to be more focused on what it is. Kind of hides the name, the purpose of the book, but it's really the reason. There's one overarching reason of why you must, as a leader and as an individual, this goes all the way down to the bottom level, you must become wildly financially successful. And a lot of people, they have this opinion in their mind of that becoming financially successful or rich people are bad, money doesn't grow on trees. These scripts that we've just been taught and hammered into us. And if we can be willing to put those off, the ultimate reason we go over the first two reasons why you need to be financially successful, or the first two sections rather, are you have to do it for your haters and you have to do it for your supporters. And then we go over your country, your family, your faith, all the different reasons, but so the 9 of them. But the first two are the most impactful, right? The people who don't believe that you can be successful, right? You need to go be successful for one reason, and that is out of love for them. Because if there's somebody who's telling you that you can't do it, it's really a reflection of what they believe about themselves. And so if they're saying, no, you can't be successful, you're never going to make it out of the projects, you're never going to make it anywhere, you're always going to be living off the government, you're always going to be living off your parents, you're always going to be in your parents' basement, whatever, that's because that's what they believe about themselves. And so because you love your haters, it's your moral obligation to go and become wildly financially successful, to allow them so they see, wow, I know him. I know he's just a normal person. If he can do it, then I can do it. And it actually frees people. I forget who said it, but I love the quote, let your light shine, so that all the other people it gives them permission to let their light shine. When you let your light shine, it gives other people the permission to let their light shine. And that's why it's so crucial that we all become wildly financially successful as an act of love, to help other people see that they can and have the confidence that they can. So that's the first kind of tool that I've used to help people. And with each section, there's a workbook. So it's like, hey, who are your haters? How would their life change if they saw you be successful? And then what are you going to do about it? So it's like kind of a workbook, but helps people walk through the process of, why should I as an individual? Yeah, I get that we should in general, but why should me? How is it going to change my mom's life? The mom who's telling me I'm never going to be successful. If I did go make $1 million, if I did become wildly financially successful, how is her life going to be better? What would she choose to do if she believed in herself more? When you start thinking about that, it becomes emotional. You break down, you start crying. And that's where the change happens. That's where the beauty of what happens is you start to understand, wow, I could have a huge impact if I chose to. And then the next step is just choosing to do so. And so that's tool number 1. The second tool that I have is a webinar. And the webinar really focuses, the title of it's called You Are Worthy. And it goes into, number 1, it goes into the fact that you are worthy of success and helping you believe in your worthiness, believe in your ability to achieve success. 2, it helps you fix and heal your relationship with debt so that you can actually have a healthy relationship with debt and money in general, understanding the difference between debt and investment, different things like that. And then the 3rd is how to actually manage your money, how to live within your means and focus on abundance rather than fear and scarcity, focus on love and abundance. Most people I've ever talked to, they don't want to get out of debt, right? If you could say, okay, you could be out of debt or dead broke, or you could have some debt and have twice as much money as you need to pay off that debt, but you're over here investing it. People don't want to get out of debt. They want to make sure that they are able to get out of debt. So they're more concerned about income mobility than they are about being in debt. And so we focus on that kind of interchange in the mind and how to actually progress through that to where you can actually live in abundance and love all the time. And then the last section in that is focusing on the monetary exchange versus value exchange, just understanding value exchange as a whole and how to, if you're worried about not having enough income, and this is something as a leader, I would be absolutely teaching my people always, right? If you're worried about that I don't have enough money coming in, that's a monetary value exchange. the reason that that's happening is because you're not adding yet enough value to other people for them to pay you money. And so it goes into that mindset and helps us shift out of the mindset of I take, and I just need something, and puts them into the mindset of, okay, I need to start giving so much of myself that it hurts people not to pay me.
As you were talking, I started thinking about, how many people come into the workforce that are just, not prepared for what you just had mentioned, talking about the whole, I need to, be able to give that in order to be able to receive that. Because when we're younger, we just think that, hey, I have this experience and this education, and therefore you owe it to me. And you're saying that that's actually the wrong mindset to have. We need to think about that whole giving concept.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think I'm a deeply religious guy, and I think in what area of religion does anybody owe me anything? The only way I get anything as far as Christ, forgiveness, anything like that, is not necessarily that I have to do works or something, but I have to be willing to give up of myself. I have to be willing to surrender myself to Christ for him to be able to have claim on me. If I'm not willing to surrender my will and surrender everything that I am and possessed and I'm willing to do, then I can't really expect the redeeming attributes of what he did for me. And so that for me, that goes into every aspect of my life, right? If it's a principle and it's true on one side of the equation in the religion side, it's got to be true everywhere in my life. And I just like to apply principles blanket. If it can be applied blanket, then I consider it a true principle and I'll accept it into my life. If I can find somewhere where it doesn't apply, then I'm probably not going to be committed to that principle until somebody helps me make sense of it.
Also, we had talked about the whole legacy piece, and then also the issue associated with being able to help, other people to learn from it. And I had shared with you a story being on the finance committee at my church, and one of our elders was talking about, his tithing and his giving back to the church. And he said, I don't share that with anybody because it's personal. And so then I asked him the question, I said, well, then how do you expect the younger generation to learn to give like you give? And he looked at me with a dead stare. And I think that's another thing that people have to remember is that, okay, well, if I've gone through this and I've gone down this path and gone through this journey, I now need to have and help others do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another tool that I have. It's more of a speech that I would give to corporate leadership or managers, owners of companies, things like that. But I've redefined SMART goals, not to take away from the old definition, but to help people understand how the SMART way, right, as an acronym, to actually create a legacy. And I'll just blow through those really quickly. And if you want more definitions, then reach out to me. But I give an actual corporate speech on this. But the S is sexy. Like you have to, when you state your vision, when you're bringing people into your company, if your vision for your company isn't sexy enough, isn't like mind captivating enough to keep people focused on it and keep people thinking about it all day long, then it's not big enough. It's not good enough. It's not inclusive enough. So that has to be the huge thing. Massive. Is it big enough that it requires other people to help you? If I can accomplish my goal all by myself, but I'm just going to graciously allow people to participate, that's not the same as like, look, you are a valued contributing member of this, and this is not going to work without you, right? If somebody feels like it lies on the back of them to help this get accomplished, they're so much more willing to give. They're willing to stay up late at night and sacrifice for this ultimate goal. And so, for this legacy. So is it massive enough? Is it remarkable enough? Some things that are remarkable, right? Carving 4 people's faces on the side of a mountain, Mount Rushmore, right? That's a remarkable thing. Whoever thought up that, and it was just like, hey, this would be fun. But that's like, people come from all over the world to see that with their eyes because they just don't believe it, right? It's like, that's just a picture. No, it's really there. I've been there. So that, another one is like Tesla put a car in orbit of the earth, right? Something like that. Like, it seems pointless, but what's cool about it is the mind, it's expanding the mind, saying, wow, people are going to talk about this, and it's advertising, right? So is it remarkable? I missed the A. The A is audacious, okay? So the A, I get kickback from this, but that's why I use it. Audacious. Is your goal divisive enough, right? There's going to be people who hate your goal, and there's going to be people who love your goal. But it's important that your goal and what you're chasing is divisive. It's making sure that you are selecting out who's in your team and who's not in your team, who's passionate about helping you accomplish this, who's not. And the people who are in your organization who are in the against, they're not passionately and they're in your tribe. It's not disrespectful, but like, let them leave, right? Let them go find somewhere else that they can be passionate about, because it doesn't mean that they can't be passionate. It just means they don't love your goal. And that's okay. As a good leader, you should be able to recognize that and set that person free from having to be participating in something they don't want to do. And so is it audacious, remarkable? And then the last thing, and this is really the kingpin of what you had mentioned with the elder in your church, is, are you being transparent? Are you sharing it with the world? Not in an effort as a gaudy or egotistical way to share your goal, but one is accountability to make sure you actually accomplish your goal. And two, to inspire others to go and chase down their legacy goal. And it's so crucial. If Bill Gates never told anybody about Microsoft computers, nobody would be using Microsoft computers. If Steve Jobs never took on Apple and said, look, we're going to be transparent, we're going to share this with the whole entire world, what we're trying to accomplish, then we wouldn't all be in love with Apple. And so transparency is so crucial when you're trying to create a movement of legacy.
Oh, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, everything that we're talking about here, even talking about the upbringing with all of those brothers and sisters in the house and homeschooling. Oh, your poor mother. Oh my gosh, she's definitely should be sainted if she isn't already.
I agree. I agree completely.
Is that, man, it's all filled with just a ton of emotion. And we need that when we start talking about legacy, right? Because some of it is just so far out there that we don't see it quite clearly. And we just need to drive towards it. But we use quotes on the show to help us drive some of that passion. Is there a quote or two that you like that you can share?
Oh, that is a good question. Let's see. What are my favorite quotes? Honestly, I don't even think about quotes that often. My favorite quotes are probably some of my own quotes when I quote myself. And that sounds maybe a little bit self-serving, but honestly, I've never heard anybody say things like, you need to go identify your identity. Like, really clarify who you are. That when I think about what I'm doing, my daily actions, am I living up to the legacy I'm living? Have I identified my identity? That is something that rings in my head all the time and just motivates me to really get after it. Another quote that I already shared on the show is, when you let your light shine, that gives permission to other people let their light shine. Those are probably the two that are the most commonly in my mind going through, because it's motivating, it's giving me power, it's helping me accomplish more in my life. Because I know who I am, I can then go share who I am. I mean, this goes into another aspect of my message, but I think is crucial for a leader. You can only love and believe in somebody else as much as you love and believe in yourself. And that goes into relationships with your spouse, your children, your business partners. It doesn't matter what relationship that is. You can only love and believe in somebody else to the level in which you do for yourself. And so, like, for me, my wife didn't understand this when we first got married, but I'm infatuated with myself. Like, I love myself so much that it's easy for me to go and give love to other people because I'm so in love with myself. I know who I am. I know all of my imperfections, and thus I'm able to have compassion for other people's imperfections. I know all of the greatness that's inside of me that I'm not fully expressing, and thus I just intuitively believe and know that there's greatness inside of others that they're not quite yet expressing fully, that if I can help them identify it and identify who they are, then that's just going to lift everybody up around them. It's just going to help everybody. And then that feeds into the letting your light shine so that other people around you can shine along with you. So those are the two quotes that I would say are like always in my mind. I'm always thinking about them.
Well, I think those are really good. And also, I think for me, when you started talking about, loving yourself, I mean, a lot of people could take that as a negative, but you're not talking about it from a position of conceit. You're talking about it from a position of abundance and awareness. And that has to have some boldness within itself. That in itself is audacious to be able to talk and feel that way. But the reality is, if we all stop and think about that, is that you're dead on right. Mm-hmm. Is that if there's no way we can positively impact others if we don't have that positive coming and radiating and generating from ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything in my life goes back to Christ on one level or another. And for me, I think there's no way that I can conceive Christ doing what he did without knowing his identity, knowing what his purpose was, what his mission was, what his potential was, and who he was as an individual, he was able to love and is able to love us because he loved himself first, because he kept the greatest commandment of all, do unto others as you would do unto yourself. You have to be able to do it to yourself if you're going to do it to others. And the dark side of that we don't talk, I try not to touch on too much, but like, if you ever are treating people badly, that's an outward representation of how crappy you're treating yourself. And you really have to think about that. And if if people are treating you badly and you're feeling all this resentment and anger and all this stuff, feeling victimized by others, you are already, and you probably have been for years, feeling a victim to yourself. You've already been cheating on yourself. You've already been not fulfilling your own dreams. And so then when somebody points it out, now you're upset at them for pointing out something you already know. And it's easier to be upset at them than it is to look inward and say, oh, crap, that's a belief I already hold. I just don't like it being pointed out, right? And so just as good as it can be, hey, love yourself so you can love others, there's the opposite side of that we've got to help at least understand that's where people are at. And so when it comes to coaching and leading people out of that, if you don't know where they're at, how are you going to go get them and rescue them? You got to know where they are and be willing to go to where they are, at least with them on an empathetic level, and then to show them the light and point in the direction. Say, hey, look, there's a light over there. I can teach you how to get there. Take my hand and let's go. But if you're just standing over there and yelling at them, hey, come on over here, well, like, they have no idea why they should move, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when I start thinking about, you being able to gain, the wisdom that you've gained at, you're such a early age. God, I'm still working on some of the things that you're talking about and where you already are. So I'm looking forward to hearing you share with us a time where you've gotten over the hump and what it meant for you.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think it really so there's two stories that really come to my mind. And I think I'll tell it in one overarching story. And I'll point out which two moments it really happened for me. But as a kid, so I was raised, my mom, bless her heart and everything, I love her and she's gotten the help that she needs now, but she was extremely narcissistic, very abusive as a child, and probably in large part because of emotional irregulation, because she had so many children, right? And there's no way that I'm going to condemn anybody there. And as an adult, I can understand it, I can comprehend it. As a child, I didn't. I felt very attacked, very unloved, very abused. And my way of choosing to protect myself from that and protect my family was to become a leader in the house, to make sure that everything got done so that my mom wouldn't get upset and then beat us, right? Well, the downside to that was, what I didn't recognize is I actually had become my mom to my siblings. I had become the oppressor. I had become the person who was abusing in order to save them from her abuse. But in this weird twisted way, it didn't really click until I was about 13 or 14 years old. And my older brother Rex came home from college, and he was witnessing me going in and impacting my will on my brothers and sisters to force them to do what I wanted them to do. And he came in, he held me down, he just like wrestled me down to the ground. He just held me really tight. And in his mind, it was for an indefinite amount of time. He was just going to hold me there until I got it, right? And we had a conversation because I was struggling, couldn't get out. I literally felt like I couldn't move anything. And he says, hey, Sam, this is how people feel emotionally when you walk into the room. They feel this restricted, this captive by your presence. And it never occurred to me, and here's why. It was inconsistent with what I believed about myself, right? I thought I was showing up one way, but I wasn't. See, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, maybe 6, I remember a time driving with my grandpa. And we were driving to the dump to drop some stuff out at the dump. And we're listening to the radio. He turned down the radio, put his hand on my knee, and he said, hey, Sam, your voice is really pleasant to listen to. You could probably lead people to greatness, maybe even be on the radio someday. Right? So that was the first time I'd ever experienced love, ever experienced somebody believing in me. And so from that young age, I had identified in my identity that I was a leader, that I could lead people, right? The problem is I didn't understand how to lead people. I didn't understand the impact I was having. And so I was a leader. I still got things accomplished, We didn't get beat by my mom anymore. So it's like all these great things. But then I had become my mom. So when I was sitting there with my brother and he helped me switch that, like turn my mind there, the penny dropped, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was really the hump for me when I decided, okay, I can be a leader in two different ways. I can be the communist dictator where you just do what I say because I said to do it. And if you don't, then like, I'm going to force you to do it. Or I could be a leader out of love. And so I actually shifted my whole way of interacting with people. I mean, at this young age, 13, 14 years old, I would go to my siblings and say, look, two rules that I'm gonna give you, right? That you can gauge me off of and hold me accountable to as a leader. One, I'm never gonna ask you to do something that doesn't need to be done immediately. Okay, so that's rule number one. Rule number two, if you don't do it, then I will get up and do it. Right? So to show that there was accountability. And then the second thing, the third thing was you have permission. I finally gave them permission to tell me no, to say, no, I'm not going to do that. And what happened was over the course of three weeks to maybe a month of me being very clear, hey, I need this done. And can you do it? Asking them rather than telling them, and then having them say, no, I don't want to do it. And then me getting up, going and doing it, and getting them feeling comfortable that way. I actually had, after about a month and a half, they were actually better at following and better at getting things done by me just inviting them to do it rather than me forcing them to do it. And they were doing it out of love to the point where I could be sitting on the couch, right? And this sounds super self-serving, but I could be sitting on the couch and I could say, hey, could you get me a glass of water, Afton, my little brother? And he'd be like, yeah, I'd love to, right? They loved to help me once they realized that they didn't have to help me. And I think that is what really helped me get over the hump when it comes to leadership, is when I made that shift of, wow, there are two motivating factors. Well, there's two ways to get somebody to do something. There's motivation, which is force, pushing, you're going to get fired if you don't do this, whatever the case may be. There's motivation, and then there's inspiration. And inspiring people is always more effective. Love will always trump hate, fear, anger. Love is always going to beat that out. It's just, do you have the patience to let love do its work before this is a more immediate movement. This is takes some cultivating, and it takes integrity to make sure that when you ask somebody to do something, if they don't do it, you're going to go do it because like it has to get done, right? You're not just pointlessly asking people to do stuff for busy work. Nobody enjoys that. No employee, no leader, nobody enjoys doing busy work. And so if it doesn't need to be done, then why are we asking people to do it? And I had to learn that as a leader at a pretty young age.
So Samuel Knickerbocker, I'm looking forward to being one of those ticket holders of the other 100,000 that's in the Georgia Dome to see you. With
cool.
Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Samuel, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Samuel Knickerbocker, are you ready to hoedown?
Oh yeah, let's do this.
All right. So what is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
The biggest thing I find in myself that's holding me back is being conscious on a daily basis of connecting with my team and making sure that they're focused on their specific gifts and not trying to have an overall system for them to just like feed into my system, but help them recognize their gifts and exploit their gifts for their benefit.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Serve first and love more.
What is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
I think it's radical honesty and openness. I'm not always the nicest person. I'll admit that. Like, from my heart, it comes from a good place always, but I'm very direct with people. I don't mince words. And So to be in my presence or to be coached by me, you're going to get very direct communication. And that helps people know they don't always like me, but they know that they don't ever have to wonder what I'm thinking about them or what I'm thinking. And that contributes a lot to people are willing to join my team because they know that they're going to get all of Sam, all the good and all the bad, and they know what that is, and they're okay with. They don't have to guess who I am.
What is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
I would say, honestly, staying connected with God, staying connected with, in my opinion, the greatest leader, the greatest legacy leaver, all of that. Staying connected with God and my purpose is a daily occurrence. Every morning I wake up and that's the first thing I do. I get connected with who I am, my purpose, my goals, and then I get connected with God through meditation and prayer. And that, I think, if you're not doing that, even if that's all you did, it would change the way you interact with the world entirely.
What is one book that you'd recommend to our listeners? And it can be from any genre.
I think The Anatomy of Peace is probably one of the best books. The Anatomy of Peace and then The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. Anatomy of Peace is by the Arbinger Institutes. If you've heard of leadership and self-deception, that's all about the corporate world. The Anatomy of Peace is the precursor to that, about how the character Lou learned everything. And that book has had a greater impact on my life than I think any other book, bar the scriptures. And then The Four Tendencies is a great way to actually communicate. It gives you a language to communicate expectations, inner expectations and outer expectations. And from a leader to subordinate or just relationship wise, it helps people understand, okay, why am I not performing in this area that I know I need to? And what things can I put in place to help me fulfill those expectations?
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Samuel Knickerbocker. Okay, Samuel, this is my last Hump Day Hold On question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, which for you was maybe last week, huh?
Yeah, that's funny, actually.
And you've been given the opportunity to take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you. But you can't take everything. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you and why?
Honestly, it would just be to love more, like be more willing to give of yourself. And I have this phrase that I say to myself, and I don't know if I've never heard anybody else say it, but the only way to be truly selfish is to be selfless. The best feelings I've ever received in my life are when I was in the service of others. And so if I was just chasing the best feeling, the best high, the best everything that I've ever received, then I would spend every waking minute of my life serving others and loving them unconditionally. And so that's what I work on every day. I'm not perfect at it. I don't know anybody who thinks they're perfect. I'd like to meet you, for me, I'm not perfect. I don't want people to think I'm perfect, but that's what I would say is just love unconditionally and be willing to serve more.
Samuel, it was an honor spending time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Absolutely. So I am Sam Knickerbocker on Instagram, Sam Knickerbocker Samuel Knickerbocker on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. And then I also have a podcast called Fuel Your Legacy. And this podcast is simply focused on habits, mindsets, and behaviors of the world class and how to actually build a legacy. So what's essential to build a legacy? I do a 3-part show. Monday, I introduce a topic. Wednesday, I do a book review on the topic. And then Friday, I have a guest on that week that's going to really help us dive deep into their personal experience and their life experience on that habit, mindset, or behavior. And that's a fantastic podcast just to listen to.
Samuel Knickerbocker, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you, and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.